A poor Korean family manipulates and lies their way into working for a wealthy Korean family, but things get complicated when a bizarre and previously unknown variable is introduced into their scheme in the 2019 Oscar-winning genre bender Parasite. I'm Connor Eyzaguirre.
And I'm Adam Johnson.
And I'm Mysia Pierce-Lewis.
And this is Filmgazm. Welcome to the Filmgazm podcast. Our best of 2010 series continues with Adam's number 5 and my number 3, the 2019 Korean thriller Parasite, the first foreign film to win Best Picture and one of the most phenomenally original films of the decade. Adam, why did this make your list?
Well, I think you just hit it there, right? It's the originality. I think there was a bit of a novelty element to it, when I think it hit big, obviously winning the Oscar of like, oh man, foreign film and all that stuff. It's like, I think for people like us who probably have our eyes been open to that prior, it's not been as big a deal. But I know, like, anecdotally in my life, there's a ton of people who like, oh, I didn't really watch a lot of foreign films until I saw Parasite, and now it opened my mind to a bunch of other stuff. And I think that's really cool. So I think that's part of it. It's also just like kind of undeniable. It's like, it's very funny at times. It's completely haunting at times. It kind of has a bit of everything and has this like, split kind of right halfway in the middle of the movie where it totally flips and kind of keeps you guessing. It's not super predictable. So I think any type of movie fan could watch it and get something out of it, but it's not like so over the top in either direction that's like, oh, that's kind of more for comedy fans or more for horror fans. It just has a bit of everything, similar to Get Out, right? And I think that's part of the reason I paired those so close together on my list, and why it made my list.
Yeah, this is just a really good movie. Like, regardless of language barrier or what culture this is largely talking about, I feel like it's endlessly relatable just because of the incredible content and the really smart screenplay.
Yep.
And Mysia, why was this an episode that you really wanted to be a part of?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed kind of touching lightly on what you were saying as well about how it could be like cross-cultural in a way. A lot of people can relate to the socioeconomic disadvantages, I guess, if you will, and the hierarchies that we all live in, especially if you are majority of the world is living in a particular like hierarchy in terms of, I can't even think right now, but just in terms of like money, monetary things, like it is fixed. So if you come from a certain social structure or social class, you seem to stay in that place instead of being able to advance. And so it's just really fun to see this movie and see how the family is trying to navigate some of those structures that forces them to stay in a lower social class, and how the movie plays with this idea of capitalism, essentially. So I really love that, and I love how it's done in a funny way. It's done in a serious way. It's just tastefully done.
Yeah, most countries on this planet have a very clear class divide. They may not talk about it, but it's there. Yep. So that part of this story is so relatable, regardless of where you live. Mm-hmm. And it might not be as obvious as it is in Korea, but it's still there, and it's constantly mocking some people and just promising, the possibility of an increase in status that will never come. It's false hope.
Right.
And this movie is just loaded with that. Even when they get what they want, they still have nothing.
Yep.
It's fascinating. I think this was the first foreign film I ever saw in theaters. Wow. I almost didn't go see it. I was gonna I don't know what. This movie helped open my eyes to a lot of foreign cinema as well. Austin's the one he called me after he saw it and was like, dude, you need to go see this. And wow. I went by myself after work, and I was like, holy shit, this is something else. And yeah, I never looked back.
So we saw this movie together, Austin and I. So it came out on November 8th. My birthday is November 9th. So the next day we went and saw it. It was me, Austin, and my dad. We went and saw it in theaters together. And yeah, we went to eat out. It's one of those, you go out to eat afterwards and you just talk about the movie the entire time. Like, what about this? What about this? And like, it's that type of experience. And I think my dad is one of those people who, wasn't like, he's not checking in on a bunch of stuff. And now I catch him watching stuff on Netflix or whatever. And it's all foreign. It's all, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like the whole, like, okay, I crossed that barrier of like, I can do this. I can read the subtitles and like not really care about what language they're speaking. I'm just watching actors. Right. And then that just opens up a whole different world for you. So yeah, I don't know if I could, it definitely is not my first, it was not my first foreign film. Not because I'm like, oh, I'm such a hipster, but I just know there was more before that. I just don't know. I don't know if I can pinpoint what my first foreign film in theaters was. There's probably some that are kind of on that border of like, it's kind of half and half, that like may actually count as one. But yeah, would you count like a UK film as a foreign film?
I
mean, for us, it is technically. I mean, it's just
technically. But if somebody tells me they're really into foreign cinema and then they show me Monty Python, I'm gonna be a little bit like, come on, man.
Yeah. Or The World's End, right? The one we did earlier. Yeah.
But before I saw this, I was fairly familiar with some Korean film. Like I had watched foreign films, but it was just more sporadic, and I hadn't really been focusing on like, I don't know what it was. It was just, I think because I thought I wouldn't relate. That might have been some of it. Like I saw the trailer for Parasite and it looked weird and like, I don't know what this is. But you can't, sometimes you just got to trust your gut and your friends. I think prior to this, like Old Boy was probably the most prominent Korean film I'd seen. I'm actually seeing a special screening of that on Monday. I'm very excited.
Cool.
But yeah, Bong Joon Ho's films are a different breed. Like I was in my Criterion Blu-ray that I have that I finally got to break into for this. There was a little booklet that talked about some people consider Bong Joon Ho to be Korea's Spielberg. And I thought that was such a cool praise. And you just look at like I've seen a lot of his films now, and there definitely is just a really unique originality to his work. He's always talking about the class system in Korea in all of his work. And it all just stands out. Everything is so like you're watching a movie and you're thinking like nobody else could have ever come up with this shit. And Parasite's probably his masterpiece.
I think so too. And Connor, I love that you described your Blu-ray collection. It's like bottles of wine. It's like, oh, I was finally able to crack this open. Like you're
just waiting for the right occasion. It's not time yet. It's gotta ripen. It's gotta be perfect.
That's very funny. That's very you too. I like that.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so my question to y'all is about genre. Parasite is made up of many different genres. There's elements of drama, comedy, horror, thriller, all sorts of stuff. So which genre in the context of the film speaks to you the most?
Go ahead, Mysia.
I don't know. That's kind of hard to pinpoint because there's so many different genres that intersect. So it's hard for me to just select one. I think maybe the major ones would definitely be the drama of it. I think that's just to the forefront just because most of it is dramatic. It's talking about the life of this family, their individual goals, their individual setbacks. It's talking about a wealthy family, how vapid and like ignorant and oblivious they are to like the real world just simply because they have money. And then they like actively like separate themselves from the lower class, like on purpose. So I can see the drama. It incites an emotion in you. You get angry along with the characters. You get upset. You start feeling sad and shitty about your own life sometimes, like as you're watching this, because you can relate to some of these characters and the specific things they're talking about. But then I can see the aspect of the thriller because it does keep you on your toes. Like when you find out, okay, they just infiltrated this wealthy family's home, like collectively as a family, but then guess what? There's another family in the basement. Like that's been there for like 4 or 5 years. So that's another added element of like, oh my God, what is going to happen? What's going on? They start getting into tussles and fights. People get stabbed. It's a lot. So I think the drama and the thriller are the standout genres for me.
It is interesting that you end up we end up relating to the poor family, even though it is the rich family that's being manipulated and lied to and taken advantage of this whole time. But we still can't relate to their literal castle on the hill. Like it's a fascinatingly structured film.
But then it makes it hard to relate simply because maybe in some moments, some intimate moments when they're sharing like, oh, my son is, I think my son has some issues, maybe schizophrenia or whatever, because he saw a ghost. For a minute, you want to empathize with her, but then she turns around and says something really stupid. And you're like, oh no, she's not.
She's telling this super personal story while eating a bowl of ramen that she commanded her maid to make for her son who didn't even want it.
Right. Or her husband saying that like people who ride the subway have a certain smell. Stuff like that. Like you lose all empathy, you lose all connection. You're like, oh, you deserve this.
When you start talking about the smell of the poor, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Right. Right.
Adam, what about you?
So it's funny. After the first time I watched it, in theaters, obviously that would have been my answer. I think Mysia, but this is the third time I've seen it. So I saw it in theaters. I watched it like during the pandemic, like early pandemic, just kind of like obviously we all had nothing to do, so we were just watching movies and stuff, watching random stuff. And then today. So I actually think this time though, like because I knew what was going to happen, the comedy stood out more. Like I was like, man, this is so funny. I forgot how funny this was. There's like some little moments and lines, and the amount of times that like somebody says, "Oh, it's so metaphorical." It's like every single time I laugh because it's like such like a ridiculous thing. It's like him like knowing, hey, this is meta, but like I'm still gonna kind of like throw this in here. I love that, and I thought the comedy stood out more this time. I mean, also I actually had kind of forgotten how violent the ending is. I was like, oh man, this was like pretty brutal. Like it's like you remember kind of like the kind of like horror elements and then like them discovering like somebody downstairs, but like I forgot how like kind of intense and violent the actual ending is. So but no, I would say the comedy stood out more this time, but the first time I watched it, like that kind of initial, I would say the kind of thriller drama aspect of it. And yeah, I mean we'll get into like I'm sure the class stuff at some point even more so, but like I really did. I mean maybe I'm just like I have to work with like around like I train basketball players, and so like I work for like these kind of like pretty rich families like that, like hey, come like work with my kid, and so I have to be like empathetic towards like people like that. So I actually found it. I mean, at times you're like these people are completely ridiculous, but I actually like I could empathize with them multiple times, and I was like, oh man, like it's not really her fault that she's like not dealt with anything, like this kind of like rich housewife's fault, that she's not really like had to deal with anything outside of that. Now it's kind of her fault that she's never tried to, sure, but like I don't know. I actually like was like this time, especially the first time you're like, oh, these people are like kind of crazy, it's like, evil, eat the rich type thing. You leave that, you leave the movie with that feeling. But this time I was actually a little more empathetic towar's, particularly the mom, of the rich family. And I don't know, we can maybe discuss this right now. We're gonna try with the names, I think, but none of us are Korean, right? So it's like it's gonna take some time, and the pronunciations aren't gonna be perfect, and so I apologize if anybody takes offense to that. But like we may refer to like people as like the mother or the the father, and like these are not names that we encounter every day. So just a heads up, I think for anybody listening.
Yeah, I appreciate the disclaimer. Yeah, for sure. All right, since we're all taking a different page here, I will go and spotlight the horror.
Okay. Good.
The last like 10-20 minutes of this thing is a slasher movie.
Yeah.
Which is so out of nowhere, especially the first time you watch this. When the mom goes down into the basement and sees the previous house like maid just like on the fucking wall trying to push this thing, suddenly you're in a different movie. And you have no idea what's about to happen, and you're terrified. And then there's a secret room in the basement. You're like, what the fuck is this? And then from there, it just the tension gets ratcheted up to 11, and it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier until it explodes at the birthday party.
Yeah.
And for me on this watch especially, I was just mesmerized by, like you said, Adam, how incredibly violent that was, and just like how it all kind of makes sense for all the various arcs of the movie. It all makes sense to be leading towards some kind of like catharsis on the rich. But at the same time, on one side, you've got just a lot of, I won't say abuse, but just kind of like dismissal of who they are by this rich family. But then on the rich family side, their kid had a seizure, and they're going to prioritize their kid over who they think is the art teacher.
Right.
So like it is hard to pick a lane here at times, and I'm impressed by that. But yeah, I love that, like the little image of like the kid seeing what he thinks is the ghost, like the way the guy looks coming up from the basement, just like this freakish, like from The Grudge or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I forgot that too. I was like, man, that guy looks nuts. That would terrify me if I was in first grade. They said, at the time.
His eyes kind of look like they're glowing.
Yeah, they did. They did. Yeah.
It's the perfect image of what a child would see if they saw a stranger in the basement.
Yes. Yeah. Crawling up the stairs like that. It's like such a perfect like shot too,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, this is an endlessly conversational movie. There's so much to talk about. We could do 100 podcasts on this movie specifically and have different conversation every single time. Yeah. In fact, this is the third podcast I've talked about Parasite. on since I started this show.
Really?
Yeah. I did a bonus episode with Austin the first year we were doing these. Then we did an Oscar Sunday on it where we did a
I listened to that Oscar Sunday.
That was really fun. And now this is part 3.
Right,
kind of cool. So let's talk about the background of Parasite. It's actually pretty fascinating how this came about. Parasite was conceived by Korean filmmaker Bong Joon Ho in 2013 while he was working on his sci-fi thriller Snowpiercer. Have y'all seen that?
Yes.
Yeah. I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Snowpiercer is awesome. Yeah.
That movie's so kick-ass, so grisly and visceral and just really cool, and possibly a sequel to Willy Wonka, depending on who you talk to.
Chris Evans' finest hour.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Bong was encouraged by a theater actor friend to write a play. He'd been a tutor for the son of a wealthy family in Seoul in his early 20s and considered turning his experience into a stage production. So Bong Joon Ho kind of lived through some of this, which is so cool. The film's title, Parasite, was selected by Bong as it served a double meaning, and he had to convince the film's marketing group to use it because no one else got it. They were like, well, where's the monster? And he's like, it's not a monster, it's a metaphor. I love that, the whole metaphorical thing.
So metaphorical.
Yeah. Bong explained, he said, quote, because the story is about the poor family infiltrating and creeping into the rich house, it seems very obvious that Parasite refers to the poor family. And I think that's why the marketing team was a little hesitant. But if you look at it the other way, you can say that the rich family, they're also parasites in terms of labor. They can't even wash dishes. They can't drive themselves. So they leech off the poor family's labor. So both are parasites. I love that. I didn't even think about that shit. Like, yeah, they are. They can't do anything for themselves. So they're relying on this family with useful skills to carry them through life. Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. And then, might I add, most of those skills were just made up. If anything. Yeah,
they did. Yeah, they have no qualifications. The only thing they're good at is lying to people.
Yeah. Like the sister was not an art therapist.
Oh, hell no. Yeah. What she said, she was like, I just Googled it for like 10 minutes or whatever she said. Yeah. She said, and then
improvised the rest. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I do think was the only one that actually did, like, the dad was like a driver at one point, like a valet or something like that. It's like I was the only one that actually had some kind of like, experience in the field. But everybody else, they just was like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Well, I love that this all came from his like school friend being like, I got shit to do. Why don't you do it? So I don't have to worry about some jock banging the girl I like. Yeah. Like that's where this all happened. This all stemmed from that.
Which that also, like, even that scene is like, so it's like every scene has a moment where you can like talk about the class, right? Because he goes to him specifically because like, I don't have to worry about you. And then like, what are the odds, right? He's the one that actually takes the girl in the end, right? So like, and the point is kind of like the girl was probably going to fall forever because of just like the age she was at and like the kind of like state of mind she was in at the time where she just wanted the attention, right? So it's like, I think like she was clearly longing for some sort of attention because of like the lack of it she was getting from her parents. So that alone was like a part of the class thing. It's like, oh, I'll go to this like lower class guy, like she's not gonna go with him, which is like so sad, That's like, that was so, and then he's the one that ends up kind of, or I guess, momentarily with her in the moment. So I thought that was like really smart too. I hadn't thought about that as much the first time I saw it, but then I was like, oh yeah, like even that is commenting on kind of the whole class part too. And then every piece of the movie is commenting on class in some way.
Yeah.
Do you even see the daughter interact with the parents at any moment?
She says something to the mom a couple times, and that's really it.
Yeah.
And then vaguely when the dad was like making fun of her while he was on the walkie-talkie with the son, but it really wasn't a personable interaction. She was like very annoyed.
They clearly have a favorite.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And they kind of cross. They literally, in like when there's like zoomed out shots in the house, they literally like cross paths like ships in the night, but they never like interact. Like she'll be going up the stairs, like one's coming in the kitchen or something like that. There's so many cool shots in the house like that of like kind of people, and they like clearly are intentional, right? Of like people kind of moving in different spots and like that's saying something about them, that's saying something about them. She kind of like depressively like walks up the stairs multiple times. That's all like really smartly done, I think.
Yeah, every bit of this film is very strategically planned out. You can tell.
Sure, for sure. Except there was a goof. We'll mention it here in a second that I caught. I was like, oh, okay, that was weird. But I'll see what y'all think about it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I can't wait to hear that.
And real quick before we move on, because I like what you were saying, Adam, about like the disconnect just with the wealthier family, but you can also see that disconnect in the poor family too. So when they're in like their I don't know what you call it, but they have a particular name for it in Korea, but like the basement kind of home that they were in.
They kept calling it a semi-basement.
Yeah, but I think there's also like another like Korean word for it. I
Oh,
just don't
okay.
know right now. But even when they're there and we have those shots of them like in the beginning of the movie of them like dreaming about having this better life and like, oh, if we were wealthier, like this is what we would do. And so even though they are in closer confinement with each other, they're still disconnected because now they're so dissociated from their actual reality because they don't want to be there, that they're living in a fantasy and not living presently with each other, like in harmony. And they're thinking, oh, if we're wealthy, then all of this pain and all of this struggle that we're facing is going to be eliminated. However, then we see the wealthy family in that life of luxury that they so desperately want, and they're like just as disconnected, just in a bigger space.
Yeah, no,
So
that's spot on. And I think to that point, like the actual there's a meal they share in the kind of smaller place in the kind of semi basement, where I think it's just Kevin, they give him Kevin, he's the only one working at that point, and he's brought in some money, and they're sharing a meal together, and they're like clearly like joyful, right? They're having fun together. And it's like, but all they can think about is like kind of the next step. It's like it's that the problem with that kind of like climb the ladder mentality that like kind of most people have in capitalist society, and that's like really depressing. So it's like you actually have the joy right there. It's right there. You know what I mean? Like you just like understand it and like realize like, hey, what we're doing right now is cool, but they want more and more and more. Just and same as kind of the rich man. It's like, hey, we actually have everything and we live this life of comfort and luxury. And I think the dad of the kind of the richer family is the perfect like example of that kind of like. He gets home and it's so easy for him to just like unwind. Like he's like, I have he's like, I have everything done for me. Like I'm able to just kind of like unwind. It's like, what a nice, thing for him. And yet even then he like doesn't have the energy to kind of give to his kids, except the son, he clearly has like some kind of relationship with the son that is like interesting. There is a little father-son thing here, like a kind of an undertone to it. And like you see it like the last shot where I don't know if we want to get there yet, but yeah, there's a father-son thing that I want to get back to later. So remind me, Connor, later to get back to it when we kind of go through the movie.
Okay. In terms of that disconnect from reality thing, I love that that's in here. The saddest part of that for me is when they're all having the like celebratory like booze and snacks party when the rich family's camping, and they start planning like long term for this. Like they're talking like Kevin is saying like, hey, when me and the girl get married, we can hire actors to play my parents, and just like Jesus, like who you can't maintain a con for that long and still know who you are.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, I can't believe that. Of course, things can go south, but no one's getting married. So after Bong Joon Ho finished Snowpiercer, he wrote a treatment for the first half of Parasite, and then he started working on his next film, Okja, for Netflix. Did you guys see that?
Yes.
No.
That was
Okja's
another
solid.
Yeah.
Snowpiercer and this one and Parasite are much better, but Okja's fun. It's a good movie.
Yeah, for a movie about a genetically engineered super pig that's supposed to make like super bacon for everybody, but a kid gets attached to it and tries to save it. Really good movie.
Oh.
Wow.
That was the elevator pitch right there. That was pretty good.
Yeah, and also another film where it's very clear where the class divide is, and the rich versus the poor, but this time there's a super pig named Okja. Yeah, I've seen most of his work. There's only a handful of stuff I still have to watch. His production assistant Han Jin-won wrote 3 different drafts of the Parasite screenplay from Bong's treatment, earning a co-writer credit. So they worked on this together. The infamous house, built by the fictional Korean architect Namgun Hyunja, was actually a carefully constructed set, not an actual house. For the longest time,
I read that too. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was a real house in Seoul, but it's not. It is, however, currently being built as a sort of Korean theme park tourist attraction thing, because they're really trying to capitalize on the global success of Parasite, and they're building a replica of the house to be like an attraction.
Of course, they're trying to capitalize on the success, right?
Yeah, didn't quite get the message, did they?
yeah.
I wonder how much tickets are going to be to visit the Parasite house.
Yep.
Oh, that's hilarious. And you know what? I'm complaining and bitching, but I am going to look at it and see.
Sure.
It'd be a fun reason. It'd be a fun reason to go to Korea.
I'm ever in Seoul.
Yeah. And the food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like going to see the Parasite house would be the only reason to go to Seoul. It'd be nice to put that on the list and be like, and while I'm there, I can go to the Parasite house.
Yeah, that would be a strange move to just go there solely for that.
Yeah. Why are you going to Korea? I'm going to go visit a house from a movie I like.
Yeah.
But they didn't actually shoot the movie in. Yeah.
No.
Right.
That's it. That's why you're flying 22 hours across the world to go see a house. Yes. A black and white version of the film was also produced and shown at the International Film Festival Rotterdam in 2020. This version is available on the Criterion Collection Blu-ray that was released in October 2020. And I do want to see this version. I just didn't want to see it for this show because I didn't want, we're covering the standard Parasite. Covering black and white Parasite, I feel like would be its own thing. Mm-hmm. But I definitely am going to watch it as soon as I can.
Yeah, that would change the experience. That would change the experience. I agree.
Yeah. And then I wonder how the lighting would change based off of where they are. So if they're in the poor family's home or in the basement as compared to being in like the wealthier home, because it's more open and bright. So I wonder what kind of weight that would give to the movie too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do you think that like seeing this movie in black and white would make the subject matter like considerably bleaker? It would just feel like a sadder movie?
I think so. More intense.
Yeah, probably. All the color gets sucked out of it, all the brightness. And now it's just this kind of dark movie about a long con.
I would certainly think the rich house would be less appealing.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a vibrant use of color in terms to contrast like their life versus the park's life.
Yep.
And I do like that a lot. He did everything he could to make the semi basement just look unbearable. I mean, you even got a guy pissing next to it on like every night, like clockwork.
Yeah.
Just there have been plans to remake this film as an American miniseries on HBO for years, with Bong Joon Ho and Adam McKay serving as executive producers. It will apparently explore stories that are happening during the events of the film. Tilda Swinton was confirmed to have been involved, but she has since left the project. Mark Ruffalo is rumored to be involved as well. And I say, get rid of this. We do not need this.
I don't know. I trust Bong and Adam McKay. I actually think I do wonder, like Mark Ruffalo. I hadn't read about that, but there is a way to do this. I think would be really interesting. I don't know what would his role be. I wonder. Is it set in Seoul still, or is it going to be kind of like a total spinoff?
No info on that yet. All that they said is that I think it's supposed to be set possibly in America. That's the rumor, since it's going to be an American story. Like they want to Americanize Parasite.
No.
So if Bong's involved, I think that's fair. I think that makes sense. And McKay is very much a like he talks about class and
he would be the guy to put on this for an American version.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about that.
Well, we'll see. I mean, they've been talking about this since 2019, and there has been zero traction. So I don't know if this will ever actually happen.
Yeah,
especially now with the strike going on.
Yeah.
So maybe one day.
Yeah.
And I guess just out of curiosity, would it still center like this particular family or like Korean people in general, just in the context of being in America, like Korean American or like kind of like immigrating here? Like I'm just, because all of the, and I think that's why I'm hesitant, because depending on which lens they go with will kind of make or break it. It just, or if they decide to, like you said, fully Americanize it, and it's like from the perspective of an American individual, I don't know.
I think the Korean American thing could be really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it'd be like, hey, here's our class system here. Like, hey, I come to America. Let's hope it's not as bad there. And it may not be quite as bad, but there certainly is a class divide here. Maybe not as like defined as like as theirs, but that would be interesting. Actually, like, okay, let's like look at it through the lens of these Korean Americans, maybe living in a Mark Ruffalo home, right? Maybe that's or something like that, or whatever the case, or they work for him or something like that. That would be interesting. I think that could be pretty interesting. So it's like you're almost like examining both at the same time,
Yeah.
You could even, like, if you wanted to sequelize it, you could have like, Kang Ho Song has to flee the country due to the events of what happened.
Sure.
And they all set up shop in America and try to make a life, but things don't go their way. So they revert to their old tricks.
Yeah. And yeah. I mean, there's a lot you could go, because they could kind of like, they could get in with some like, very like well-meaning, like, like kind of like, you know, for lack of a better word, like kind of woke white family that's like, oh yeah, like yeah, these Korean family, like they want to come and help us, and but in the end, like they're kind of like this, yeah, that kind of faux like yeah, it's like the yeah, it's that like white savior like Korea, let's welcome them in, and in the end, like both are taking advantage of each other, and yeah, that could be pretty interesting. I actually think that could work.
Yeah.
Reminds me of that scene in Knives Out when Don Johnson's talking about Ana de Armas like she's family, and then just like doesn't even realize he's doing it, but hands her his empty plate.
Yeah.
I can see that kind of thing going on, and yeah, yes. this might be, you know, you guys have you convinced me. Maybe this could work. Parasite has an IMDb score of 8.5, Rotten Tomatoes score of 99%, audience score of 90%. God damn. Critic consensus reads, an urgent, brilliantly layered look at timely social themes. Parasite finds writer-director Bong Joon Ho in near total command of his craft. I agree. Yeah, this thing is pretty damn perfect. It's a Swiss watch.
Yeah. Perfect length too.
Yeah, not too long, not too short. Like just it's the, you know, it's Baby Bear's porridge of movies. Parasite was a huge international success, grossing $262 million on a budget of $15 million adjusted for US dollars. It was nominated for 6 Oscars, winning 4. It took home Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, Best International Film, and Best Picture. It was also nominated for Best Film Editing and Best Production Design. It's currently streaming on Max. And I believe, Adam, you were there with us when we watched that Oscars. Yeah.
Yep, it was fun. Yeah.
It was very rewarding to see Bong Joon Ho kept going up there, getting another statue, different speech. Just so happy. I love that picture of him like making 2 Oscars kiss. Yeah, that was a good year for film. And Parasite, you know, there was competition that year, which is crazy. I was convinced 1917 was going to take that win, but then Parasite snuck in, you know, like a parasite and took everything.
I'm like feverishly trying to figure out what won best production design, because I was like, man, I have to do.
I think that went to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, you got this beautiful Korean mansion versus the entirety of 1969 Los Angeles. Yeah.
No, very fair.
All right, with that, let's give this film some awards.
Sounds good.
Let's start with the best line. Who wants to go first? Who wants ups?
Take it, Mysia.
Okay. Well, you know, I can't ever just choose one. I feel like I have 2. And I think it's the subway line from earlier. People who ride the subway have a special smell. That in and of itself is so loaded. It's loaded with a lot. It's just loaded with this like contentment. It's loaded with the social class divide. It is just so loaded. And then it's kind of boomeranged again near the end, where he like physically is holding his nose because he's so repulsed. Even though people around him are like getting stabbed, like he still has to physically close his nose because that's how unbearable the scent of poor people are to him. So that one I think is a good line. And then the line where the dad of the poor father, the poor father, he says, you know what kind of plan never fails? No plan at all. And I think that's also loaded too, because it's just like this family has been busting ass trying to just like make it, trying to survive, trying to feel like they have some semblance of control over their lives and then to enjoy it. And it's like, no matter what they do, like stuff happens, or the circumstance that they come from always permeates back into their plan, no matter how well it seems to be going. So I think those are 2 of the best lines for me.
Well, it's also not even about like enjoyment. They're focused so solely on survival. They never have an opportunity to enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you're also thinking like if they would put this amount of effort and skill into like learning how to do something that's theirs, they wouldn't have to lie and cheat their way into life. I went with that same line. I love that whole speech he gives in the like the gym when they're all just surrounded by the flood victims. It's brilliant. In that scene where he does hold his nose while trying to get the keys, I think that man in particular, considering he'd been living in a basement for 5 years, I think he smelled worse than anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, get it on that front. I don't agree with his whole thing about the smell of the poor, but in that one instance, yeah, he probably was fucking rank.
It's the visual of just like, yeah, him always does at like a lower class citizen. But yeah, but no, I'm sure that guy was like, yeah, it didn't smell like, Axe body spray by any means. Yeah, it's just, yeah,
and that's fair, but it's also crazy because like literally when you are in an event where people are dying, like your kids are at risk, you're seeing people like literally get
yeah, who
stabbed,
cares?
blood
Who
is
cares?
oozing.
Yeah,
And that's the thing that you focus on. Like you're not going to be at a place to even think about that. And he consciously was.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Well, in his view, the only person worth saving was his kid, and he had some kind of like medical, like, Caesar situation. So anyone getting stabbed, he didn't give a shit. They were the help.
Yeah.
Fucking bastard. When he's constantly talking about like, I like people who don't cross the line. It's like, you sound like a fun guy.
No, there is some hardcore, right wing vibes to that, to the dad, the rich dad.
Straight classism.
Take care of my family and nothing else. That kind of like, no, he's got some hardcore Fox News vibes.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know what the gun laws are in South Korea, but if they're lenient, he's got a few.
He's probably a fan. Yeah.
Well, what do you got for line, Adam?
I went with so I guess it was like right as they were first starting their little kind of feast in the house when the family of four, they finally get like, they're camping, the kind of lower class family of four gets to have their meal, and I guess it's the daughter, I'm trying to figure out the name exactly. No, it's the father. He says rich people, let me find it again. Rich people are naive, no resentments, no creases on them. And his wife says, it all gets ironed out. Money isn't iron. Those creases all get smoothed out by money. That, man, is that not true, right? It's like, that is like, money does not buy you happiness. No question about it. I mean, I live my life like, I do not care about money. It's straight up just like daily joy, daily joy, daily joy. That's all I chase. But man, people who have money, it does iron out some stuff, right? It does make things easier, smoother. But there's a limit to that, right? There's just like that. That's, to what end, to a point. But that is true, and you can tell they are like, that's a real longing in her voice of like, man, like I wish I had something, like I wish I had my own iron,
Yeah, I can relate. One thing I've always wanted is people to be able to say like, oh, I don't have to do that. I've got people to do that for me. I've always wanted that, just a vague concept of people. But you gotta have a stock portfolio to have people, and I don't have one.
Contact my people. Yeah.
Yeah, good one. I almost went with that too. I love that whole speech of everyone's just like, the idea that like you can be so rich you don't have to worry about resentment. That's so wild and not true at all. I think the rich are more resentful than anyone on the planet.
Yeah.
But if you're poor, the grass is always greener on the other side and all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I guess to that, it's you see this like fetishization of both elements of poverty and wealth. Because there's a part where the wealthy couple, right, they're in the house and they're like being all sexual and stuff, and they're literally fantasizing about poverty. Like he's like, oh, where are those cheap panties and stuff, like, because that really turns me on. And she's like, buy me drugs. So it's like like they kind of, I don't know, they invalidate each other all at the same time. Make fun of each other at the same time, but also want what each other has, thinking that it's better than whatever thing that they're at.
I don't think they necessarily want that kind of lifestyle. It's just it's completely alien to their lifestyle, so it's new and exciting and weird. And while you're getting fingered and thinking about that, it's gonna be sexual.
So, well, yeah, it's, that point is the same reason why, like, these like kind of, in the early 2000s, the like rich white kids like listening to rap, it was like it like exploded, right? Because like, oh, that's so foreign to me. These like these suburb kids, like that world is so foreign to me. Like I'm gonna grab onto that and listen to that. And yeah, it's the same thing. It's like it's just different, right? So we're obsessed like with humans. We can't like sit in our own stuff and like take joy from that. Like we always have to think about like what different, like, what new or whatever. It's so hard to find like contentment. Like people have such a hard time finding that. So seeing them both kind of reach for this thing that's like kind of alien to them. It's like it doesn't even really matter that's nicer or not as nice. It's just different, right? That's the only thing they want.
Yeah, I love this. Another line I nearly went with was it was like right when they're in their semi basement, they're having a feast because they're all employed and they're just grateful for it. And dad starts giving a speech about how, you know, let's thank Mr. Park for his wonderful contributions to our family, and he gets cut off by the pisser and he just goes, fuck, not again, and like goes into that. I was laughing my ass off. Like, this dude, to have somebody who just comes by and pisses on your front, like on your porch every day at the same time that you have to prepare for it and you have a plan. I can't imagine that. Like, just, oh my God.
Yeah. Brutal.
The best part of being rich has got to be not dealing with that.
No, I mean, look how clean like everything was. You know what I mean? Like everything's like pristine in the rich person's house, and it's like it's all taken care of. It's all, there's never a cup out of place. There's never, and yet they can't find enjoyment.
Yeah, which is, finding contentment and happiness is fucking difficult, regardless of your social status or your bank account. Finding your place in the world is a really difficult thing to pull off, and very few people have done it. And I don't know if I know anyone who's done it. I think everyone I know is searching for their own happiness in some way or another. Some people are closer than others, but it's interesting to look at.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I feel pretty close. I really like my life, and I really like the people I get to work with and for. I mean, I feel like I'm, right there. It's not even necessarily striving for other stuff. It's like just kind of like maybe trying to get a little more kind of financially stable. But like I just said, I don't really care about money. It's more just the daily joy. I mean, I literally had a kid today. I coach basketball, mind you, if you didn't know that. So I had a tournament today, and this is like this really beautiful moment, right? This kid on our team kind of dealing with some stuff off the court, and has a crazy game today. It's a game winner with 2 seconds left to win our last game today. It was awesome. Like it was our last game as a team today. We kind of take a little break and then the school season starts. And in the car, we all go to eat after the games. That's like a big thing for me. Like I always make sure the whole team goes and eat. Like that's part of the things. Like be a team, let's hang out together afterwards. We're on the way to the restaurant, and he says, "Coach, this team has changed my life." And I was just like, "Man, that's why we do this, right? That's why we do this." So, yeah, it's like I feel pretty like daily joy, contentment is like I feel it. I mean, obviously there's moments and there's dips, ups and downs for sure, but in terms of kind of like chasing that thing, it's like I do feel like I kind of have that thing that a lot of people want, and I'm incredibly grateful for it.
Well, when I first met Austin, and then later when I met you, one thing I absolutely love about you guys is you guys have this infectious optimism about life. You're always just so like, glasses half full, looking forward to things that I just love. It rubs off on me when I talk to y'all. Like, it's just great. Like, you guys are pleasant to be around.
I appreciate that. I have a big goal. My goal is to improve every room I'm in, whether it's a Zoom chat meeting, right, or just a room that I'm in, whether it's a gym or meeting or anything like that. So that's a big thing of mine. So I hope I do that more times than not.
Oh, you do. You definitely
appreciate it.
Yeah, and I have a bit of a skewed look at this today, especially because I full confession, I got stood up on a date today. So not exactly the best, like, glasses half full kind of mood to be in, but I'm trying.
Keep trying. Well, we didn't stand you up.
Yes, you did. Thank God.
And then, hey, you dodged a bullet.
Yeah, yes, I did.
Yeah. Her loss.
And I found a nice, pleasant cafe. So there you go. I still had a good day.
Good.
All right, music moment. This score is very hot.
This was hard.
Yeah, it's very ethereal, very like specific to certain moments. What did you all go with?
I don't really. It was hard.
I don't have one either. If that's what you're about to say.
Yeah, because I was listening to it as I was watching the movie, and I was like, "Oh, I like that score."
It's beautiful.
But then that really goes well with this scene. So I don't know. I can't really choose. I think I liked any of the scores where you felt the tension build up.
No,
I think that was really effective for me. And I like thriller kind of psychological stuff. And so when you have music that accompanies scenes like that where there's tension held, it just amplifies that emotion. And I love that. I love being in that. Oh my God, why is this happening? Is this gonna happen? Or like, when is this gonna come to an apex kind of thing? So
yeah.
I didn't have one either. I was like, man, there's no needle drops. There's no like random, like, I guess there's a couple like actual physical needle drops. Right? They do play a record at one point. And I don't know what song that is. It sounds like it's a Korean song, but and then there, the score, there's like some real old classical music. So some of that, like the piano stuff on some of that old classical music, I actually enjoyed quite a bit. That was in like a little bit more peaceful portion of the movie. But no, I think yeah, the thriller elements of it were good. But yeah, this was a hard one to kind of pick out one musical moment from it.
Yeah.
I agree. I ended up picking kind of a amalgamation, a buildup of moments. It's my entire music moment is what I call the calculated destruction of the housekeeper. Uh,
Mm.
that whole it's a brilliant scheme and manipulates, the peach allergy and the little hot sauce on the tissue to look like blood. And the music that's playing there, it's like Machiavellian. It's like this,
Mhm.
it's like something you'd see out of fucking Shakespeare. And I was mesmerized. I was glued to the screen like, this is neat.
His face when he picks up the tissue with the blood is so perfect. Just that like shake of the head, like like I knew it. It's just like it's like, dude, get over yourself. Yeah, that was like so cruel.
Yeah.
They did there.
I'm surprised he didn't throw on a like, like a
Yeah,
surprise, like, oh dear me,
yeah,
gasp.
yeah. Grabbing the head. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that whole bit. It's cruel, and
Very. It's
they're
horrible.
they're
Horrible. What they're
taking
doing.
jobs away from decent, hardworking people like them, trying to make ends meet, and they're just
Right.
manipulating them out of work.
Mhm.
But you're on their side. They're the ones you're relating to. They're our heroes.
Mhm.
I don't they're not my heroes. I didn't think that watching it this time. I'm like, man, no, they do some dark shit in this movie. Like
Yeah.
I the first time they're my heroes, right? You're like, oh, like I'm viewing it through their prism. I was not this time. I was like, man, everyone in this movie is evil. Like everyone here has like real like moments of evil and real moments of humanity too. But they yeah, no, they do some. I mean, they kill her. They kill her. It's like that's that's terrible. I mean, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's like we watch these shows that have these anti-hero type people, these Walter Whites of the world. And we're like, oh yeah, we root for them. It's like that's wrong, right? Like they do bad things,
Yeah.
and this family did too. That was tough.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
it's
with that, even
yeah. Go ahead.
real
Go ahead.
quick, it was just so interesting to see the dynamic between like that poor four family that we kind of like enter the movie with and kind of follow along. But then also like the maid and her husband that's living in the basement because they're basically in the same situation. Poor people just trying to make ends meet,
Mhm.
trying to like leech off of somebody who's wealthy that could give them a salary that they feel like they can survive enough off of,
Mhm.
to the point where they're like, oh, well, I'm going to manipulate the situation as much as I possibly can. And so that's why when the former maid says to the new one, like, oh, sis, like we're sisters, we're in this together. She's like, no, we're not. So it's just interesting to see like the crabs in a barrel situation.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
we are in the same dynamic. We are all crabs here, but we're really trying to like overreach each other to get a specific end game. So I think that's another really beautiful commentary on social class, but then also like some of the strife and issues that happen within your own social dynamic, trying to get something else that you may not already have.
Yeah, and I think yeah, the movie demonstrates that multiple times. So that I think is really and it's really smartly done. And there's I have context for why these people are doing these things, but that doesn't make it right, right? Like
Right.
I can see why they're doing this. Like they're put in this like really unfair situation, but it's still not right to kill someone. It's like bottom line, what I mean, it's like the end does not justify the means at that point. So yeah, that's what's so interesting about it. Is like it puts you in all these like kind of moral quagmires, like multiple times throughout the movie. And I think that's like part of what makes it so good. It's so layered, like there's so many layers to it, and I think that's why it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
I I love you mentioned like Breaking Bad and these anti-heroic guys who are like our lead character. They're who we're seeing the events unfold through their eyes, but they are monsters. And
Mhm.
I think it's incredibly talented writing when you end up sympathizing for people like that. When you are on their side at moments, or you don't even realize that you're excusing a lot of terrible behavior because these are the characters that you've been introduced to as the ones you're supposed to relate to.
Yeah, yeah,
And when you can pull that off, that's how you win Best Original Screenplay. I mean, well done. Um, and also, it fucking kills me that when discovering that the maid and her husband are much, I'd say, a worse situation than they are in, there's no empathy. There's no like, maybe we should help these people out. I can relate. I've been there. It's get the fuck out of here. You're in my way.
yeah, yeah.
It is like, like a dog eat dog, just every man for himself situation. And that is tragic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very cool stuff. Uh Performance. Who wins the movie? There's options here. It's a great cast.
Lots of options. Yeah, yeah. Maji, go ahead again. You can go first.
Okay. I guess is it Mr. Yoon, right? Is the the dad of the poor family, and then Park is the dad of the
I
wealthy
know
family.
Park is the dad of the wealthy family. Yeah, Park's the
Yeah,
wealthy family, and
or it's
I
Kim.
Kim was his fake driver name.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
His actual name is Key Tech.
Okay. So both of them, yeah, they have my vote. I think they demonstrated the some of the social class differences that we've been talking about like extremely well. Like they are little foils to each other. Um, and I think their acting was phenomenal. Just like the roles that they played, the dynamic that they had with each other, especially like in the cars and stuff. Like when the driver is trying to look back at him, he's like, "No, focus on the road. Like, like stay in your lane. Don't look at me. You can like talk
Like
at me, but I
literally
can
stay
talk
in
to
your lane.
you."
Yes.
Yeah, but like actually, right. But like actually there is a divide here. I mean, so much so like you're in the front, I'm in the back. You know, you are the person doing the labor, I'm the one benefiting from it, kind of thing. And so you
Don't
see
cross
that
the line,
dynamic.
he says, right? He says, don't cross the line. He literally says, don't cross the
Yeah.
line.
And he said he's good at not doing it. He almost does it, but he's good at
Yes.
making sure that he doesn't actually do it.
Yep.
So you see this like tension, like literally throughout the entirety of their relationship up until the end, where the poor dad is like, you know what, fuck this. Like I'm taking him out because I'm tired of it all. So I think they did a phenomenal job acting as their characters, but then also acting that deeper metaphorical message that's there.
Yeah, and to that point too. I mean, yeah, they are like the kind of crux of the movie, right? And I was talking about the father son thing earlier, right? They even have a weird, almost father son dynamic too, where like he's working for him, and he like weirdly looks up to him even after he kills him. Right? He's in the basement. He looks at that like poster. He's like, "Oh, like I'm so sorry, Mr. Park," because that in that poster he shot kind of like a great man, right? That kind of like that look back and like he's like this tech giant. Apparently, I guess is where he got his money. And even then, even after he killed him, he's like done with him. He's still just like, "Oh man," but like Mr. Park, you know. And he even says like when they're sitting down for the meal, it's like, I want to thank Mr. Park, you know, for like this, all the stuff we've done. That is, yeah. I mean, that's like, wow, that is such a sad like reality that like you are kind of like, you deal with the reality that's like presented to you, right? It's like he feels like I can't really do anything but like look up to this kind of like great man that I work for, you know, in his mind, you know, this guy, he's just like a dude, you know, he's just like a random guy. But in his mind, he's like, this is the guy who provides for me, helps me provide for my family. It's like, I can't help but look up to him. Even though in the end, like I wanted to kill the guy and I literally did. So that is like a crux of the movie. And the father son thing too, right? So like they're pretty close, right? Both of the father and sons with their, like they're both the rich and the poor, with each other's like father and son. And at the end of the movie, he walks out, right? Like they buy the house, like the son, you know, becomes rich and buys the house, and he goes up and hugs the son, like the son and father hug each other, and the mother's just in the background, right? She's just kind of like standing off to the side in the grass. She's like not really involved in that embrace. And I think in the end, it's like a weird father son movie. It's like a kind of a classic, you know, thing at different points of the movie, and then it's kind of hammered home right at the end there. But no, I thought both of them too. Those are good picks. I had a secondary pick because I was like, I had a feeling one of y'all would take one of those two. So I actually went with the original housemaid. I thought she was hilarious this time. Like just like the way she kind of moves around. She's like this kind of just like classic little like doting, you know, housemaid, I guess is technically her job description. So I went with her this time. I thought she has some really like affecting scenes when she comes back. The kind of hysterical version of her too is really affecting as well.
That image of her on the house camera just standing outside the gate is fucking haunting.
Yes.
It feels like something out of The Purge. Like you're just wondering, like, who's she gonna slaughter first? It's
and to give her a full name, so that actress is Lee Jung Yoon. So,
okay, yeah, she was fantastic.
Yep.
So I gave this to Kang Ho Song as well. Mr. Kim. He's pretty much like Bong Joon Ho's muse. He's in almost all of his movies, and he always is like the standout. He's fantastic. I recently, a few months ago, Colton and I did Memories of Murder, one of Bong Joon Ho's earlier movies, which finally got an American release around Parasite because there was an audience in America finally for his work. And that's such a haunting serial killer movie. And Kang Ho Song is just phenomenal in that. And you look at him in The Host and Snowpiercer, and this guy's just good. He's a great actor. I really hope one day he gets some American props. And I think, you know, his role in Parasite is just brilliant. This father who wants to provide for his family, but, you know, society pretty much keeps him from doing that. He does the best he can with what he's got. He truly does love his family, and he just doesn't want to be poor. He doesn't want to be in this class. You can tell he just He hates it. He hates the moments when Park just kind of like, holds his nose while glancing at it's devastating to him every time. And he keeps all that away from his family. He holds on to that himself. When he's with his family, he's this jovial, like, hey, we're doing great. But inside, he fucking hates this so much. And you can see that whenever he's alone. And I love both sides of that character.
Mm-hmm.
When they're talking about the smell, that was the most I felt for him when the little kids outside camping and they're under the table, and the wife and the rich kind of wife and husband are laying there and they're talking about the smell, because in a vacuum what they're saying is not just like, I mean, it's not good, but it's not like, I mean, so cruel, it's just like classic kind of like rich, like, hey, I'm gonna look down on the poor type thing, but obviously knowing he's hearing it, and then you see his face and like that shot of him just like it just breaks him, you know what I mean? It just like absolutely breaks him. It's like, man, I'm trying here, like I'm trying, and like all you can talk about is the smell, like for real, that was like heartbreaking. That was like, wow, man, that's brutal. That's just brutal.
Well, the Parks don't even talk about it to be cruel or to be mean. It's just absolute dismissal of like, I don't even, not even part of my life. It's just some guy who drives me around.
Which like almost makes it more cruel,
Yeah. He doesn't even see him as a person. He's just the help.
Yeah.
And then I think that's funny because like the wealthy mom, I think there's a scene in the movie where she says to the art therapist that she's about to that she thinks she's about to hire, she's like, yeah, I would never want to hire anybody that like I'm not close with, essentially insinuating that she and this person and the former tutor have like a long-standing relationship and she just met them both. So that just goes to show like how disconnected they are, like not only in their own world, but also from other people, to where they can sell her a story. It's so believable and touching to her that she thinks like, oh yeah, I recommend, or I listen to your recommendations about anybody because I trust you. And it's like, but you don't know this person at all. Other than the fantasy that they've sold you. And it sounds good enough that you're like, cool.
Yeah. I actually felt the most kind of like for her, because it's just like, she's just ridiculously naive. It's like she actually doesn't do much like evil. Like even when she's shopping and she's kind of just like grabbing stuff, it's just like she's just clueless. There's nothing that she does like inherently evil. It's just like this person has just never had to think about where does money come from ever a day in her life, And it's like, I mean, is that her fault? I don't know. I mean, it's her fault for not like ever seeking anything more than that, or like, hey, I wonder how like the other half lives, But I don't know. I read her as like a totally like just clueless character, like just has no idea. Whereas I think that the rich father has a little bit more kind of like nefarious like nature to him.
The moment that turned me off with the mom for good was when they were her and Mr. Kim were talking in the laundry room about firing the maid, and he reaches out to shake her hand, and she's like, what are you doing? Like she gives him this look of like, ugh, I don't want to touch you.
Well, but even that was because he had grabbed the tuberculosis napkin.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
but this is the same person who like had a glove on touching the underwear and then put it to her face.
Right. That was so funny. Yeah, she put it to her face. That was hilarious. Yeah.
So it's like it defeats the whole purpose of the glove. So exactly. I feel, I don't know, for me, I think sometimes naivete can be just as dangerous as someone who's more intentional. Because since you're so oblivious to anything that you're doing, you could just be causing like just relentless damage and like not be aware enough to like say, oh, maybe I should like step back a little bit. So I think therein lies maybe like this tension, this complexity of like when you're aware and you're manipulating, but also when you're not and you're causing just as much harm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the type of person that needs someone in her life to be like, set aside, be like, hey, like you need to understand, like this is not how real people live. Like this, you know what I mean? Like there are people who have that in their life. There's like I said, I've worked with kids who come from like crazy means, like their houses are nuts, but somebody in their life has told them like, hey, like I'm going to take you on this trip, or we're going to go build this like village or like put in like a water well in the middle of Peru. And like that changes their mindset, right? Like it's like, oh, okay, not everybody lives like me in this little bubble, that woman has clearly never had anybody do that in her life. And it's like, she's old enough that at some point she's got to try to, that to me is her worst trait. It's like she's probably never tried on her own to kind of go like see how the other side lives. But it's like, man, it's like most of us, we either have had to live that, or someone has told us, hey, this is real life. This is what real life looks like. It's not all this like this perfect, American dream, little bubble, or Korean dream in her case. So I was like, man, this woman's just an idiot. It's like, I just let them do things like, man, she is so dumb. She's so dumb and naive. It's like, I almost like felt sad for her, like somebody in her life needs to be like, hey, like, whether it's the housekeeper or somebody, like, hey, you do realize this is not real life here, right?
Well, I think it's even like implied at times that in her own life, she's more of a prop than a wife.
Yeah.
Like when Kim and Park are in the car talking about whatever, and Kim just goes like, well, you love her, right? And Park first off gives him this look of like, hey, whoa, you're getting close to the line here. But then just tells him like, yeah, sure, let's call it love.
Let's call it love. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
What is that? Who is she to you?
I felt bad for. It's like, this person's not receiving like what they should from a partner. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it's really sad. And yeah, I mean, she's like has no idea what to do as a mother either. She's like clueless. As a mom, she's like, I need to hire all these people. Yeah, and she just gets taken advantage of constantly, and it's just this kind of bumbling idiot.
Yeah. And she gets a brutal dose of reality at the end of this movie.
Oh no, that look on her face. I actually think she's kind of an underrated part of the movie, like part of the cast. Like on this kind of like third watch, I'm like, man, she's good. Like I hadn't really like given her as much thought the first couple of times I watched it, but no, that like blank, like ghost like look on her face when like everything's going down is like that was impressive.
Yeah. You rip a rich person out of their bubble that quickly and that painfully, and it's a vicious physical culture shock that's hard to come back from.
Yeah.
Oh, great stuff. All right. Best scene. What's the best scene of this movie?
Go ahead. All you.
I feel like I've been pushed to go first, but all right. Like,
I'll go first. Do you want me to go first? I've got one.
That's good. I'm ready.
Okay, that's good.
I still hold true to this. I think where amidst all the stabbing, all the carnage that's happening outside, the part where he still holds his nose and to see how that really bothers the poor father so much. Because like we had discussed earlier, like in those kind of instances, that is literally not even a thought. Like that can't not be a thought because there's too much adrenaline, there's too much happening for you to even conceive that. But for him to be so conscious in that moment as to like, though his son is like convulsing, other people around him are bleeding out, he still is like, ugh, I can't stand the stench of these lower class people. I think that was just so powerful for me. So I think that was one of the best scenes.
That whole scene, the whole backyard scene, the whole thing is incredible. Starting with them putting on those like Native American like headdresses, which is like a comment on like, hey, like talk about people whose land was stolen, and like Parasite, layered thing. It's like that is So clearly Bong's like, he's like, hey, I'm gonna throw a little American about, and he has that teepee in the backyard, and she says like, oh, I got it from the U.S., like it'll be fine, It's like, man, that is that's a pretty biting commentary right there.
Yeah, I love the little like, hey, you're getting paid extra.
Yeah. Like oh, as if okay, he can leave with his dignity because he's paying a little extra. Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah, that whole element, that whole scene is so good. I love the little, just like he doesn't have his own keys. Like the driver carries the keys around. Even that's like, that's weird. Like, shouldn't you be holding onto your keys even if you have a driver?
That's weird.
Doesn't have to think about it, right? So he's able to, he just turns off when he gets home. I don't have to think about, responsibility at all,
I want to know like how they did the scene where the crazy dude like bashes the rock against the kid's head, like with a wide shot, like you see it happen. How the hell did they do that?
And the kid's hand, he does that little twitch with his hand. That's like really good. Well done. No, that's haunting. Yeah.
The fucking prosperity rock. What an ironic almost death.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the thing too. It's like, man, he just 1 inch up. I mean, that kills him. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
how the hell did he survive? Like he doesn't even have like scarring or like his head's not shaved for brain surgery or anything. He just has like, he's fine.
Well, he's got money now, so that irons it out, right?
Yeah. Okay. Traumatic brain injury or financial security. I'd have to think about that for a while. Damn. All right, Adam, what do you got?
I went with the escape scene, the escape from the house scene, where they go from nobody being there to the family coming back, they're all under the table and have to kind of crawl out to get away. That scene, I think there's like the tension, there's a bit of the build up in the score, like you mentioned earlier, Mysia, and then obviously just the like, there are moments where you're like, how in the world are they not noticing these people? But of course they wouldn't notice them, right? Like, why would they notice them? Like, that's the whole point. It's like they're right there. They're literally right there, and you can't even notice. That's like part of the commentary of the movie, right? So I mean, they're feet away from you, and you have no idea. Like you can literally smell them. At one point, she says, like, I kind of smell that smell, and it's like they never even think like, oh, it's like possible. Like they live in like what they think is such a safe home that like, oh, there's no way like somebody's in here. That's not even humanly possible. When in fact there are 3 humans sitting there. So that whole scene is like, the way it's shot, lit the kid out, the oblivious kid who like actually is probably the sharpest one of all of them because he makes comments multiple times or like, oh, it smells like this. Yeah. Like you guys smell the same, he's actually the one that kind of like has the sharpest like wit about him, even though they take him to be this like kind of like, genius, like aloof kid. I think that's really well done and kind of like crystallizes the movie like in one scene.
Well, I love that, like, of course they wouldn't see them because like what they see through them all the time. They're not even there to them. They're just around, all they see is like the items they're handing them. They don't see them at all.
Right.
Yeah, that was great. I love the physical comedy of that scene. It's like reminiscent of Charlie Chaplin movies almost. You can tell Bong's influence is there. It's really oddly funny. It's just, look to the left. Jesus, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, he just freezes. You can tell he's just like, what do I do? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what would have happened if they would have seen him? Like, how would he even react? Like, oh, hey, like that would have been crazy. So my goof that I was going to mention earlier is right here. So they're all barefoot when they crawl out, and then when they show them walking outside, they all have shoes on.
Well, maybe their shoes were at the door or something.
But then the family would have seen that when they walked in the front door.
Touche.
So like what like. Were they in the garage? Is that just a goof? You know what I mean? That's very possible. That just, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it probably is a goof.
Yeah. Just one of those continuity errors,
Nice.
Anyway.
Cool. I went with, I was texting Austin earlier, just like, I'm watching Parasite. We're getting to that scene. And he's like, and the scene is the arrival of Moon Guan, the previous housekeeper, and just everything that unfolds in that like 20-minute thing from mom going downstairs to seeing Moon Guang on the wall, trying to push this thing to the reveal of the secret basement to secret husband to like, yeah, he's been here for 5 years because he's running from creditors. And they're all just like, what the fuck? Like they're looking over in the stairwell, like, what is happening right now? And they all fall like Looney Tunes style. And now all of a sudden Moon Guang's like, hold up, bitch. What's going on here?
Yeah. Yep.
Let's all go to jail together. I love that. Like she's willing to go nuclear because of how pissed she is at this whole situation.
We're all going down, she says. Yeah.
I love that whole thing. It's like, this is crazy. And pretty much everything up to like mom kicking Moon Guan down the stairs. Like that whole stretch is just like, it could work as its own short film. It's so brilliant and just, I love a good hard left in a movie where it's, everything's going great. And now all of a sudden it's like, boom, now we're here. And things are different and it's scary. And what do we do now? I love that shit. And the first time I saw this, I was not expecting anything remotely like that to happen. And now I just look forward to it every time. I think this is my 5th viewing of the movie. And I just look forward to that scene. It's like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Good stuff. Any other scenes we almost went with?
Not for me. That one stood out to me. I mean, the one you just mentioned. I mean, that certainly was, like one that kind of. There are so many scenes though of like there sometimes there's even just like quick shots, like kind of 2 shots back to back, where there's like juxtaposition of the like kind of rich and poor life. Like there's the one when the mom decides, this is late in the movie, when the mom decides to throw the party in the backyard, like the garden party, and she walks into the closet and just like basically has this like choice of just like whatever type of garment she wants, where it immediately cuts to the family, the poor family in the gym, and they're like fighting over the clothes, right? So it's like it shows that kind of like that constant juxtaposition of like the 2 worlds that they are living in. I thought like there's like 4 or 5 examples of that. That's the one that stood out the most to me, of just like, it's not like full scenes, but like just really stood out this time of like, man, that's really sharp. That's really smartly done.
Yeah, I like that stuff. I love all the scenes of them like convincing the Park family to hire this like associate they had once heard of. I love all of those. I think they're all just brilliantly constructed. And every time mom's never suspicious about all the recommendations she's getting. She's like, oh, how wonderful to have this network.
Like, they all know each other. That's great. Yeah, she's just oblivious. Like, and yeah, I made a note about that. It's like that's like the getting the band together, like in like movie, like them kind of like taking over the house and like all four getting jobs there. Those are really good. I really like that too. And he comments on the card. He was like, oh, this like they're like high quality, like the card. It's like what? Like just because of the card. Like it also shows how like ridiculous that world is, where it's like it's not about reality or like what you can actually do. It's all resume and like what you can sell. Like. It doesn't actually like what you're actually good at means nothing to them. It's just like, oh, like this person comes from this, like therefore, like it must be good,
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of just the working world in general. It's not about what you're good at; it's what you can convince somebody you're good at.
Yeah. Or what looks good on paper,
Yeah, exactly. You got to sell yourself on paper. Lie your way into the job as long as you can, do it. Who fucking cares?
Yeah. I think like a slight pivot away from that, but kind of connecting to what we've been saying about kind of the wealthier family kind of being oblivious to everything, just not aware at all. I think all of the scenes that include the Morse code with the lights is just so interesting. Like it's a very subtle thing that's presented, but it also is a very impactful thing because it's like, how do you not notice that like your lights are flickering and very inconsistently so? Like every time that they do flicker, it's not the same kind of flicker. So how would you not then, even if you don't know Morse code, how would you not then be able to suspect like, that's kind of odd, and then it's being controlled by people in the basement.
Well, like, she even does notice it at one point and still doesn't like, she's like, oh, like that sensor has been going crazy. Like she even makes a comment about that at one point. And it's like, she notices it and still doesn't like do anything about it. It's like, that's how naive she is. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. She's just, again, just clueless.
Well, also, I think that's like, you're buying a house that was built by some famous architect that you spent presumably millions on. You never once looked at the blueprints or anything. Like you just don't know there's a fucking bunker under your house.
Yeah, there's so much that goes so deep, and the like it turns. It also makes for great filmmaking, right? As they kind of turn the corners and different stuff like that. It's like classic kind of horror filmmaking. I'm sure Connor, you can kind of speak to that more than I can, but yeah, it's like that's so like well done. But it's like there's so much space down there. It's like that's like they just never thought to. I don't know. I guess it is covered by that thing, but even then, it's like you would at least like maybe see if like. Yeah, I don't know. That's a crazy part of it. Yeah, no plans, nothing. Just like, oh, it's rich. Like, it's a nice house. Like, we'll just buy it. Whatever. No problem.
Yeah. Crazy. Also, in regards to the business card, you just can't help but think about Patrick Bateman. Oh my God, it's even got a watermark. Like, I kept expecting to hear that every time a business card comes up in a movie. It's like, oh, here it comes. Good stuff. Cool. Well, with that, let's head on over to Letterboxd and see what they have to say on our final segment. What's in the box?
What's in the fucking box?
4.6 out of 5. I think that's the highest reviewed film we've talked about on this show. That is amazing.
It is. I looked at that. Yep, it is.
Damn. It's been 4.5 out of 5 for me. I'm bumping it up. It's 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I had it at 5 as well.
Yeah. I have 5 reviews here, 1 positive and 4 overwhelmingly negative, because I love, especially these amazing films that are critically and, socially beloved. I love looking at people just be like, it's dog shit, just to hear what they have to say. And it's never anything valid ever. But this first one was like, it's fucking gross, but I was laughing so hard I had to put this here. This is a 5-star review from Holly Amanda. Call Me By Your Name's Cum Peach walked so Parasite's Killer Peach could run.
Wow. That is creative.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
21,141 likes on that.
That's pretty good. Now the peach plays a huge part in this movie.
Yeah.
I love peaches. I'm glad I'm not allergic.
Mm.
Especially that allergic, like so allergic that it simulates fucking tuberculosis. Holy hell. Okay, now get ready for 4 infuriating, ridiculous reviews. This one's from Brandon Stowers. These are all half a star, by the way.
Star.
I know, right? Yeah. One of the most What?
Just sorry, just I mean, just the filmmaking alone, it's like worth like a couple stars. You know what I mean? Like even if you like hate this story or whatever, it's like yeah, it's like obviously this guy's like super talented. You know, like as a filmmaker. So but anyway, go ahead, Connor. Sorry.
One of the most overrated movies of all time. Kind of tired if a movie plot on how the rich get away with shit that poor people can't. Tried completing this movie several times, but it always put this Papa Bear straight to sleep. Well, Papa Bear, I think you need to watch more interesting films.
Bad take.
The Papa Bear, like yeah. God damn
Cool.
it, dude. Okay. This next one's from Farazkar. Replace the cast with white people, and it's a direct-to-DVD B movie. Trash, basura, garbage.
That's like mad racist. Wow, that's crazy.
And also, like, I mean, yeah, first off, it's fucking racist as hell. Second, this movie is not the movie you are mad at.
Yeah.
So, like, why are you judging a movie that doesn't exist?
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially saying like, oh, the only reason people like this because like they're trying to be like woke, like, oh, I watch a Korean film. It's like that's a sad take, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. This next one I have here is what most of the half star reviews were, but I picked one of them because I'm like, yeah, this is a problem. Biggest hater 123. Oh, you sound fun. Too long. Didn't know how to turn on subtitles, so didn't have a clue what was going on.
Aren't the subtitles automatic?
Usually,
yeah. But
yeah,
you know,
so
also
okay.
You can't speak Korean, so it's a bad movie. What the fuck?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what a waste of time even typing that out. It's like, okay, like I just don't watch it. Yeah, like that's bizarre.
But honestly, and I'm so glad that you picked that because I kind of wanted to talk about that. And it was maybe lightly touched on when you guys were saying how you watched in the theater, right? And this is like first foreign film that you actually saw. A lot in America, especially, that's just what it is. We don't like subtitles on stuff. And I've heard this outright from people, even in music. Like if it's in another language that we can't understand or we don't already know, we literally have a hard time sitting with it because there's such this uncomfortability because we just can't connect in the way that we think we need to through the language. So we just disregard it as a whole thing. That is a very prevalent thing that I have noticed and have seen. Because I am someone who I immerse myself in that. I can listen to French music. I have some some songs in Yiddish and stuff. I don't know what they're saying, but like stuff like that, films, music, these things like can transcend all these language barriers. Even if you don't fully understand the lyrics, there is a feeling with it. There is a sensation, and especially with a movie, there's a visual aspect or component. So sure, maybe you may not be able to understand it, or maybe it's hard or tiring to look at subtitles, but like it still is illustrating a story, and it's just something that a lot of audiences here can't handle.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No, we're terrible at it. Yeah. And for the most part, it's because like everything is usually made for us, right? So it's like we've been had to. It's like Hollywood is here, you know, like these major TV studios are all here. It's like the majority of popular culture, you know, in the visual world is English speaking, right? So we are able to just kind of like, oh, I have like all this at my fingertips. Whereas like, you know, someone in Poland, it's like if they're going to try to like, you know, have like a sense like there's Polish film for sure, right? But they're if they want the full kind of breadth of like everything that's being made, they're going to have to see something else. They're going to have to seek out another language, and so they just deal with it, right? But we can't like for like one time like watch it's like it's pretty sad, you know. Which is why I think this movie was so important because it actually did open people's eyes to something different. It's like, oh, okay, like actually I can like watch this and like read the subtitles and be fine, you know. It's and still be really the only time I get, and I don't really love watching having subtitles on if it's something in English, because I do get a little bit distracted. I don't look at the actors as much. I do notice that about myself. Like I'm kind of constantly reading and I'm not watching the actors' faces as much. That has nothing to do with like the Korean or like the different language aspect of it. That's just my personal thing. It's like because I'm constantly looking at the words and trying to like understand them. I'm not like going back and forth as much as I wish I could maybe, which is why this second watch where I've already seen it before it was even more, or I guess third watch for me, even more impactful because I could do a little bit more of watching the actors because I kind of knew what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel that watching subtitles?
Well, I've been watching everything with subtitles since I was about 9 or 10 years old. I discovered it once and thought, I can read and watch a movie at the same time. Wow. And so I never looked back. It's gotten to the point where if something doesn't have subtitles, I will not watch it there and find it somewhere that does.
Wow. Okay.
And I love subtitles. I think that's a big reason why I have never been put off by foreign film. I credit my dad with a lot of that. He showed me a lot of like old kung fu movies and stuff that, kind of forced me to read subtitles. And I was exposed to, other cultures early on. And I'm glad for that. I've never shut myself off from a culture. I can understand genre, if horror's not your thing, if rom-coms aren't your thing, okay. But if you're going to say like, I don't like Korean movies, that's weird and hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think
yeah.
Like you saw every Korean movie and you didn't like any of them. That's wild.
Yeah. And then to Adam's point, like about us just being unable to like fully receive it because it's all catered to us, I think that then makes us the parasite.
Look at that.
That's exactly what the writers and actors are saying right now.
Put a bow on it.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think, considering Hollywood's kind of the global mecca for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, like
but also in a parasitic way, because if you think about it, like in terms of I know a lot about like some French history and like French film stuff and the crossover between them and America.
Mm-hmm.
So like World War II happens, like we have to step in. A lot of the films that they were inundated with around that time were American. I mean, they like the French literally have laws and stuff that are set up to protect their film industry and like maintain their French continuity within that. I mean, and granted, that comes with a lot of other stuff that we don't really need to get into right now because the French are very proud people, and for better or for worse. But with that, like there came this like push to make sure that French ideas and cultures and things represented in media, various forms of media, are protected and not completely submersed or like erased or eclipsed by American stuff, because at one point that's literally all that they had.
What's happening? Yeah.
So and you see that in a lot of other cultures as well. There's this fight and this push to like really like support their own artistry, their own culture, their own media, their own film, in spite of another larger power taking over and completely dominating and essentially like monopolizing the industry completely. Mm-hmm. So
you see it in Italian cinema a lot, especially after the Mussolini regime. A lot of their films in the late 40s and early 50s are about overcoming that monstrosity and finding a new identity. Films like Bicycle Thieves, and then later on the spaghetti westerns, which are very influenced by America, but definitely their own thing. Mm-hmm. And I respect the hell out of that. Hollywood should not be the only one on the planet making movies that can make $100 million worldwide. And especially lately, like, a lot of like Bollywood movies and Chinese films have been crossing that financial barrier, which is great. I welcome any and all cultural like, art that's going to influence my life in a good way. I wish more people in America did too.
So, I mean, so to extend the like metaphor, I mean, like we are the rich mom, right? Like as Americans, it's just kind of like just oblivious, it's like we're just oblivious. Like we need someone to come along and be like, hey, like this thing is here too, like have you thought about this from this perspective, we are that in this, it's so metaphorical, right?
And Hollywood's the rich dad being like, I love you, but don't cross the line.
Yeah. Stay on your side. Yeah. No, man. So, I mean, there's so much there. I mean, so Australia also has like a program like that, Screen Australia, that kind of like, it's almost like a, government like subsidized, like allows like young filmmakers like make stuff so they don't have to always kind of go through the Hollywood system. There's some good stuff that's come out of that. So we don't need that program as much because we just have Hollywood, right? So it's like, that's not going to ever be a program in America because we don't really need that. But it would be nice to maybe have the opportunity for some kind of like different types of filmmakers to make stuff, rather than just like, the constant churn of kind of, sequels and prequels and Marvel. And, that would be nice to get more original stuff.
We are pretty much like, I don't know if you guys have been following the box office this year, but franchises have been tanking hard left and right. So I think we're on the verge of a very different Hollywood.
I wonder that too, because I also listened to this podcast recently about the writer's strike and how like the AI thing is like a real sticking point, because like they really, really do not want it to kind of take over the industry. And there will be this. So this woman's theory was there will be this push towards authenticity because there's going to be so much that's not authentic that there's going to all of a sudden be this thing. It's like there needs to be a disclaimer before the movie. Her pitch was like, I think the writers should have this, and directors as well, Directors Guild as well. that literally it's like almost like a stamp before a movie that's saying everything in this was actually written by a person. Everything. It's like we're gonna actually need that soon because or else we're just gonna like be fooled, which is like really sad, like when you think about it. But her point was like, I think these companies are already doing this. They just don't have to say anything about it. So like we can't really tell right now what's being written by AI and what's being written by people. The writers are still getting credit for it. Because maybe it's not the entire script, right? Is like being written by AI, but there will be a point where it'll have to say whether or not there was the assistance of AI, which I think is really, really smart, and I hope that does happen. If indeed we keep using AI to write things,
rated AI,
which I hope we don't.
Artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah. And if anything, maybe that'll start like another film renaissance.
Hopefully,
like, where we get an influx of films that are so wacky, so experimental, so outside the box, just as a deliberate like fight against that,
like a response to that. Yeah.
Guys, if this results in like a new wave of creative filmmakers like the 70s again, holy shit, all worth it. All worth it.
All worth it.
Every little moment worth it.
I don't know. I've sat through some absolute dross in the last few years, so I don't know. Yeah,
I will swallow Indiana Jones 5 if I get an entire like run of unique filmmakers telling personable, odd, impossible to nail down stories.
Well, that's very magnanimous of you. I appreciate that.
I never thought about that, but like, yeah, I think like people are tired of being manipulated by, studios into seeing like, paying $20 for a movie ticket for a movie that's dog shit. People are done with that shit. So I think there is going to be a push for authentic storytelling again. And I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah. It's like the algorithmization of movies. It's like really kind of sad, but
yeah, you can tell what's going to happen within 5 minutes. It's going to be Ryan Reynolds is going to be in it. Like you can fucking tell.
Yeah. It's predictable.
I want. Yeah.
And their thing would be like, but like you said, you want this. And it's like, no, actually I don't. Like the reason I like this is because I stumbled across it. Right. And then I enjoy this. And now you're trying to give me so much of it. It's like, I can't even take it anymore. So no, it's like, I actually want originality. Like I think most people actually do want originality. They don't want just like the same thing over and over. So yeah, hopefully there's a return to that because the Barbie and Oppenheimer thing has made me optimistic for that.
Yeah. The movie about the nuclear bomb and the identity crisis made you optimistic about the future. That's great.
Yeah. But then even with those, they're getting like crazy reviews, like crazy bad ones. And I'm just like, have we been this brainwashed and succumbed to like the run of the mill stuff that we can't even like appreciate standalone pieces?
Original, I know.
Well, like we see with Mr. I don't know how to speak Korean, there are always going to be people who just don't like good things.
Well, the one guy's name was literally like Mr. Hater, right? It's like that's like his brand is to like not like things. Like that is what a weird way to live. Like I just like can't imagine that. But Mysia, have you seen both Barbie and Oppenheimer?
I haven't seen Oppenheimer, but I've seen Barbie.
Okay, what'd you think?
I loved it. I'm really anticipating seeing it again. I was just kind of waiting till like everybody wearing pink died down. I'm not on board with that. That's great for them. I like
that got out of hand. That got out of hand.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
But yeah, when I saw it, I loved it. I thought it was a great message, like in a very like thorough message. It wasn't just feminism, girl boss, girl power. I think I do have a particular criticism, but like that's a whole nother conversation for another time. It's very minute in comparison, but I think the overall message, the themes that were presented were very thorough. Were very like emotional, like, it incited emotion within you to think a little bit more about who you are individually, to think about people collectively, like what we're all going through in terms of like, where do we belong in this thing? What role do we play? And how do I then have the autonomy to say that, no, I don't need to look outside of myself or externally. What do I want to be? And how do I stand in that confidently for both men and women and everyone in between? Because I really appreciated how it talked about the expectations kind of enforced on men as well. Because a lot of the times that's not really explored. Mm-hmm. So I like the balance of it. I thought it was great and funny and cute and I loved it.
I want to hear the criticism, but we'll save it for after the pod. We'll save it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, this is an awesome conversation. I'm enjoying this whole thing. This last one's from Dad Rizzle. And this actually touches into what you were talking about earlier, Adam, about the family. The poor family are pieces of shit. They are parasites because they lived off the rich people who were actually really kind people to begin with. The rich family were doing fine until this poor family ruined, lied, and completely weaseled their way into making this rich family's life a living hell. Unpopular opinion, but I hate this poor family, and I don't like how the poor dad got away with murder by living under the basement. They were all horrible people and manipulated this kind, rich family because they were all greedy as fuck. They didn't even try to earn their money, but instead were living off a complete lie, and not to mention almost tried killing the housekeeper, and literally did kill her, who was actually really sweet. This movie tries to explain the different socioeconomic classes and how the poor is smart, whereas the rich is gullible, which is a terrible storyline. This movie is a dreadful depiction of social stratas, and just is an awful movie overall because the poor family should have gotten what they deserved, and that was jail time. I hated every second of this movie, to be honest.
Wow.
Whew.
Again, tell me you watch Fox News a lot without telling me you watch Fox News a lot. From that one, there's bits of that I think is like fair. I'm sorry, I'm moving to the room. There's bits of that I think is fair, but to say that like the rich family was so kind is like, man, that is generous. Like that's just not true. I mean, that's just not true. Like they also are kind of like leeches and parasites. Sure, they definitely get taken advantage of, like, and like unfairly so, right? But to call them this like benevolence, like kind, like rich family